Have you ever watched your whole world collapse through the blue light of a phone screen? It was 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of soul-crushing quiet that only exists in the dead of night in a Chicago high-rise. I was staring at my wife Jessica's phone, an unlocked rectangle of glass she'd carelessly left on the nightstand. A single text message glowed under the name Mark. It wasn't the words that broke me, but the casual intimacy of them. You left your earring. The silver one. Again, my heart didn't just break, it atomized. The silver earring was the one I'd given her for our 3rd anniversary, bought from a little shop on Michigan Avenue. The room felt like a vacuum, sucking the air from my lungs. I looked over at her, sleeping peacefully, an angel in the moonlight, and I realized I wasn't looking at my wife anymore. I was looking at a stranger who had been living in my house, sleeping in my bed, and methodically dismantling my life, piece by piece, right under my nose. And in that suffocating silence, I knew one thing, with chilling certainty. She had no idea the man lying next to her was already gone, replaced by someone who would burn her world to the ground just to feel warm again. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. Our life had been a carefully constructed image of success. We lived in a sleek apartment overlooking Millennium Park, the city lights a glittering carpet at our feet. I worked in finance, long hours that I justified as building our future. Jessica was a freelance graphic designer, beautiful, charming, and the envy of my friends. She was the vibrant center of our social life, while I was the steady, reliable anchor. I thought we were a team. I was a fool. The first crack appeared not as a bang, but as a whisper. It was her phone, always angled away from me. It was the sudden girls' nights that stretched into the early morning. When I'd ask who she was with, the names were a rotating cast of characters I barely knew. She'd wave a dismissive hand. Oh, just some people from the studio. You don't know them. She started dressing differently, a little more daring, her laughter a little too loud at parties, especially when other men were around. I felt a knot of unease tighten in my gut, but I pushed it down. This was Jessica. My Jessica. I was just being paranoid, stressed from work. Then came the credit card bill. A charge for a hotel bar in the Gold Coast on a night she was supposedly at a yoga retreat. When I confronted her, her eyes went cold. Are you checking up on me? My God, I can't even have a drink with my friends without an interrogation. She twisted it so expertly that by the end of the conversation, I was the one apologizing. She was a master manipulator and I was her willing subject. The man she was seeing, Mark, was a client, she'd said. A smug, trust fund type with a flashy watch and a condescending smile. I'd met him once at a gallery opening. He shook my hand with a grip that was too firm, his eyes lingering on Jessica a second too long. They felt untouchable, wrapped in a bubble of their own arrogance, laughing at a joke I wasn't in on. The final shattering blow came from that text message. I spent the rest of that night on the couch, the city lights mocking me. The man who had proudly carried his wife across the threshold of this apartment was gone. In his place was a hollow shell, a ghost haunted by the ghost of a marriage. I didn't cry. The pain was too deep for tears. It was a cold, hard stone in my chest, and it was there that the first seed of revenge was planted. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to dismantle her life, as she had dismantled mine. I started gathering proof. I installed recovery software on her old laptop she'd left in the study. The deleted messages I found were a dagger to the heart, detailing their trysts, their jokes about me, the boring, predictable husband. I photographed every message, every hotel receipt I found in her car, every credit card statement. I became a detective in my own life, a ghost in my own home. My love had curdled into a quiet, calculating rage. The plan began to form, layered by meticulous layer. Jessica had always been careless with finances, leaving them entirely to me. But a year ago, she had co-signed on a new apartment for her cousin who was moving to the city. I knew the cousin was fictional. The apartment was for Mark. He couldn't get a lease on his own due to a poor credit history. Jessica, in her arrogance, had put her name on everything. She'd forgotten all about it. I hadn't. I contacted Mark's landlord, posing as a credit investigator. I learned the rent was 3 months overdue. The landlord was about to start eviction proceedings and file a lawsuit for the unpaid amount against the name on the lease. Jessica's name. The trap was set. The public exposure was planned for our annual charity gala, an event Jessica chaired. It was her crowning social achievement. I waited until she was on stage, giving her speech about community and trust. In the middle of her address, a man in a cheap suit served her with a subpoena. It was for the lawsuit from Mark's landlord. In front of 200 of Chicago's elite, her face went from a confident smile to a mask of pure horror. The color drained from her face, leaving her ghost white under the stage lights. The whispers started instantly. Her phone began to buzz relentlessly in her purse. I had already sent the folder of evidence, the texts, the photos, the hotel receipts to a dozen of our closest friends and her most important clients. Her social world imploded in a matter of minutes. She stumbled off the stage, her eyes searching for me. I just stood at the back of the room, holding a glass of champagne, and gave her a slow, deliberate nod. The final piece of my revenge was the cruelest. I'd already filed for divorce, citing adultery, with all the evidence attached. Our joint accounts were frozen. The apartment we shared was in my name only. She was left with nothing but the clothes on her back and a lawsuit for $50,000. She lost her clients, her friends, and her reputation. She was ruined, utterly and completely. I never spoke to her again. Sometimes late at night, when the city is quiet, I look out over the park and think of her. I don't feel triumph or even satisfaction. I just feel the cold, quiet emptiness of a house that is no longer a home. The last I heard, she was living in a cheap apartment out in the suburbs, working a dead-end job. The ghost of the woman I once loved, haunting a life she herself had destroyed. The end.